The video dropped online like any other piece of content, unassuming and cheerful on the surface, just another glimpse into the lives of beloved Nollywood stars doing what they do best, smiling for the camera, exchanging pleasantries, playing their roles even when the cameras aren't rolling for a film. But something about this particular clip struck a nerve with fans who have spent years dissecting every glance, every pause, every smile shared between these actors. Within hours, the comment sections exploded, not with casual praise or light-hearted banter, but with breathless analysis that would put detective agencies to shame. People were rewinding, zooming in, slowing down the playback speed, and suddenly what seemed like an innocent meet and greet transformed into a puzzle box of unspoken emotions and shifting allegiances that nobody could quite figure out but everyone desperately wanted to solve. Sonia Uche has always carried herself with a particular kind of grace that makes her impossible to read, and in this video, that quality was on full display in the most frustrating and fascinating way possible. Her smile was there, polite and camera-ready, but her eyes told a different story altogether. They seemed to float somewhere beyond the moment, beyond the people standing right in front of her, as though her mind had already wandered to some private thought or distant place that none of us were invited to visit. There was a stillness about her that felt deliberate, almost protective, like someone who has learned to guard their heart by keeping everyone at a comfortable but impenetrable distance. Fans who have followed her career from the beginning noticed immediately that this wasn't the Sonia they remembered from interviews and behind-the-scenes footage from years past, the one who used to laugh freely and lean into conversations with unguarded warmth. Maurice Sam stood nearby, and if Sonia was a study in careful composure, Maurice was a portrait of restrained turbulence. His body language spoke volumes even though his mouth said very little, shoulders slightly tense, hands moving in small, uncertain gestures, eyes darting between faces as though searching for something he couldn't quite name or perhaps trying to avoid something he didn't want to acknowledge. There's a particular kind of discomfort that comes from standing in a space where you once felt completely at home but now feel like a guest who's overstayed their welcome, and Maurice seemed to embody that feeling entirely. Fans who had shipped him and Sonia for years, who had built entire fantasy narratives around their on-screen chemistry and off-screen friendship, watched this moment with sinking hearts because the ease that once defined their interactions had been replaced by something heavier, something sadder, something that felt like watching two people who used to speak the same language suddenly struggling to communicate. Then Brian Okoro entered the frame, and the entire energy shifted like someone had adjusted the lighting in a room. He greeted Sonia with a warmth that felt effortless and genuine, the kind of greeting that happens between people who have inside jokes and shared silences, who don't need to perform familiarity because it already exists in the comfortable spaces between words. Sonia's face changed when she turned toward him, not dramatically, not in a way that would make headlines on its own, but in those micro-expressions that tell the real story, a slight softening around her eyes, a smile that reached a little further, a body that angled toward him rather than away. The comfort level between them was palpable and immediate, and for viewers who had been watching Sonia maintain that careful distance with everyone else, this sudden shift felt like watching someone finally exhale after holding their breath for too long. The internet did what the internet does best when presented with ambiguous human behavior. It lost its collective mind in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. Within hours, the video had been downloaded, re-uploaded, dissected frame by frame, with amateur body language experts emerging from every corner of social media to offer their professional-grade analysis of every gesture and glance. Fan groups that had once united in their love for these stars now fractured into opposing camps, each convinced they had decoded the real truth hiding beneath the surface of those few minutes of footage. The debates raged across platforms with an intensity usually reserved for political scandals or sports rivalries, with people presenting their evidence like lawyers arguing cases in court, screenshots with circles and arrows, comparison videos from years past, detailed timelines of who was seen with whom and when. Some fans insisted with almost desperate conviction that everyone was reading too much into what was simply professional courtesy among colleagues who work in a small industry where paths cross constantly and friendships overlap in complicated ways. They argued that actors spend their entire careers pretending to have chemistry with different people, that warmth and distance can be manufactured or genuine in ways that viewers from the outside can never truly understand, and that projecting romantic narratives onto real people based on seconds of video is unfair and invasive. These voices of reason, however, were quickly drowned out by the louder, more passionate contingent who were absolutely certain that what they witnessed was not acting or professionalism but something far more revealing and far more human. The believers pointed to specific moments with the zeal of conspiracy theorists who have finally found the smoking gun they've been searching for. They created side-by-side comparisons of old videos featuring Sonia and Maurice, clips from movie premieres and interviews, and casual social media posts where the two of them radiated an undeniable ease, finishing each other's sentences and laughing at private jokes, their connection so natural it seemed almost inevitable that it would evolve into something deeper. Contrasting those memories with the current video felt like watching a before and after that nobody wanted to acknowledge, the visual evidence of something precious that had quietly slipped away while everyone was looking elsewhere. Rumors began circulating with the kind of velocity that only unverified information can achieve in the digital age, spreading from gossip blogs to Twitter threads to WhatsApp groups until nobody could quite remember where the stories originated or which parts might actually be true. Insiders who may or may not have actually been inside anything claimed that the meeting captured in the video was not the spontaneous encounter it appeared to be, but rather a carefully orchestrated public appearance designed to send a message without anyone having to actually say the words out loud. The suggestion was that Sonia and Brian wanted people to see them together, wanted the closeness documented and interpreted, wanted to skip past the awkward phase of relationship speculation by simply presenting themselves as a unit and letting the world draw its own conclusions. Other whispers suggested that Sonia and Brian were collaborating on a new project that had brought them into close proximity for extended periods, creating the perfect conditions for a connection to develop away from the prying eyes of fans and industry gossip. According to these reports, their bond deepened during long days on set and late-night script readings, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than the intense, slightly chaotic chemistry that sometimes combusts quickly and burns out just as fast. This version of events painted their relationship as something quietly inevitable, two people who discovered they fit together in ways that surprised them both, the kind of love story that doesn't announce itself with grand gestures but rather settles in gradually like the changing of seasons. The alleged tension this growing closeness created rippled through various circles in ways that were never explicitly confirmed but heavily implied by cryptic social media activity and conspicuous silences. Some fans and industry observers apparently didn't welcome this development, whether out of loyalty to the old pairing, disappointment that their fantasies weren't materializing, or genuine concern about how these shifting dynamics might affect professional relationships and collaborative projects that were already in motion. The video, according to this interpretation, was a line being drawn in the sand, a quiet but firm announcement that things had changed and everyone needed to accept the new reality whether they liked it or not. The fan division that followed was swift and merciless, with online communities splitting into factions that defended their positions with the passion of rival kingdoms going to war. Team Maurice emerged as the guardians of nostalgia and authenticity, arguing that the connection between Sonia and Maurice was something rare and irreplaceable, the kind of lightning-in-a-bottle chemistry that doesn't come around twice in a lifetime and shouldn't be abandoned for something newer and shinier. They posted throwback videos and photos with captions dripping with melancholy, mourning not just a relationship that may or may not have existed but the death of a possibility, the closing of a door that many had hoped would eventually open. Team Brian positioned themselves as champions of Sonia's happiness and agency, insisting that she deserved to choose peace and stability over the complicated intensity that seemed to characterize whatever had existed between her and Maurice. They characterized Brian as the calm after the storm, the gentle presence who brought out a softer, more relaxed version of Sonia that fans hadn't seen in years, someone who respected her boundaries and matched her energy without demanding that she constantly prove or explain herself. The implication, though rarely stated outright, was that Maurice represented the past and all its unresolved drama, while Brian represented a future built on healthier foundations. The silence from Sonia herself was deafening and entirely on brand for someone who has made an art form out of maintaining privacy in an industry that demands constant revelation. She posted no statements, offered no clarifications, addressed no rumors, simply continued living her life and posting her content as though the entire internet wasn't melting down over her every move. This refusal to engage only intensified the speculation because people desperately needed answers, needed confirmation, needed someone to tell them what was real and what was projection so they could finally rest easy knowing they understood the story they'd been following for so long. Maurice's response came in the form of a cryptic quote posted to his social media: "Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom," the kind of vague philosophical statement that could mean absolutely everything or absolutely nothing depending on how determined you were to find hidden meaning. Fans immediately interpreted it as his reaction to the viral video, his way of acknowledging the shift without having to name it directly, his dignified exit from a situation that had become untenable or painful or simply too complicated to navigate publicly. The quote suggested acceptance tinged with sadness, the recognition that some chapters end not with dramatic confrontations but with quiet realizations that holding on would hurt more than letting go. Brian, meanwhile, maintained his characteristically low-key approach, posting cheerful behind-the-scenes photos from various projects, occasionally tagging Sonia in ways that felt natural rather than performative, never addressing the speculation directly but also never hiding from it. His confidence seemed to come from a place of security rather than arrogance, the quiet assurance of someone who doesn't need to convince anyone of anything because he knows what's real regardless of what strangers on the internet believe. Fans interpreted this as either mature boundary setting or subtle claiming behavior, depending entirely on which team they had pledged allegiance to in this unwanted war. But then another layer emerged that took the entire saga from merely complicated to genuinely mysterious, when eagle-eyed fans revisited an older video of Sonia participating in what looked like a light-hearted lip-sync challenge or playful dance routine. On first viewing, it had seemed like harmless fun, another piece of entertaining content in an endless scroll of similar clips. Yet upon closer inspection with the heightened scrutiny that now followed her every move, viewers began noticing peculiar details that suggested something more deliberate was happening beneath the surface of apparent spontaneity, calculated hand movements at specific moments in the song, facial expressions that seemed to carry weight beyond mere performance, a covering of the nose that happened precisely when certain lyrics played, glances directed at particular angles as though speaking to someone beyond the camera's official audience. The theory that Sonia had embedded a coded message into what appeared to be casual content spread like wildfire through fan communities who were already primed to find hidden meanings in every gesture. People analyzed the timing of each movement against the lyrics, tried to decode what the hand gestures might symbolize, debated whether the nose covering was significant or just an unconscious habit, and ultimately convinced themselves that Sonia was communicating something important to someone specific without alerting the general public to what was really being said. The idea of secret messages hidden in plain sight fed into romantic notions of forbidden connection and private understanding, the fantasy that true intimacy exists in a language only two people can speak. Brian Okoro became the presumed recipient of these coded communications based on fan theories that connected dots with varying degrees of logical reasoning. His calm, charming public persona and the timing of certain social media activities seemed to align with the messages fans believed Sonia was sending, creating a narrative of two people conducting a relationship through symbolic gestures and subtle signals while the world watched without understanding. The romance of it appealed to those who wanted to believe in love stories that transcend ordinary communication, connections so profound they required their own secret language. The fact that some fans confused him with Brian Okoro only added another layer of delicious confusion to the entire saga, with people scrambling to figure out which Brian was which and whether perhaps both Brians were somehow involved in this increasingly complicated web of connections and coded messages. Maurice's presence haunted these discussions even when his name wasn't explicitly mentioned, hanging over the speculation like the ghost of relationships past, the reminder that every new beginning often means an ending elsewhere that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Fans debated whether Sonia's alleged coded messages were meant for Brian Okoro or about Maurice, whether they represented moving forward or processing what had been left behind, whether they were declarations of new love or complicated farewells to old connections that still held pieces of her heart. The ambiguity was unbearable and irresistible in equal measure, keeping everyone engaged in this narrative that may have been entirely invented by observers desperate for drama in lives they could only glimpse from a distance. What this entire saga ultimately reveals is less about the specific people involved and more about our collective hunger for love stories that feel real in a world where so much feels manufactured and curated. We want to believe that genuine connections still happen, that people still choose each other despite complications, that hearts still break and mend and sometimes break again in the messy, beautiful process of being human. Sonia, Maurice, and Brian have become characters in a story that thousands of people are writing together, projecting their own hopes and fears and disappointments onto these actors who may be living completely different realities than the ones we've imagined for them, who might laugh at our interpretations or find them invasive or simply wish we would let them exist without constant analysis of their every breath and glance and smile.